Okay, so far in algebra we've looked at substitution and simplifying. And we've looked at how we deal with things like 2x plus 5, which is an expression when x is equal to, let's say, 3. And we substitute in and we get a particular value for this expression. Now we're going to look at something slightly different, where rather than being given the expression and then substituting a value in, I'm going to give you the following. An expression, and I'm going to tell you what that expression is equal to in this situation. Now, in the situation here, 2x is worth 8. So my question to you is, how do I work out the value of x? Well, in substitution, I apply steps in an order in order to calculate value. In this situation, I need to be able to reverse those steps. So, what steps have been done to my x? Well, only one step has been done so far, which is a good thing. X has been multiplied by 2. So, I need to inverse this step, or reverse this step, in order to find the value of x. I need to work out the operation, and I need to reverse it, or apply the inverse, as we would like to say. So, x has been multiplied by 2, so I'm going to divide by 2. And when I divide this by 2, I find out that x was 4. Now, when I divide this by 2, I also am dividing my 2x by 2, because I'm going back to what just x is worth. So over here, I'm dividing by 2, and over here, I'm dividing by 2. So what I'm doing is, I'm doing the same operation on both sides. A bit like in fractions when you apply the same operation to a numerator and a denominator in order to simplify a fraction. So you can think of this as simplifying an equation, as it's called. Now, why is it called an equation? Because it's equal to something. This expression is equal to a value. Another way to think about why we have to divide both sides by 2 is because these two things here and here are equal. If I want them to stay equal and I change one of them, I'm going to have to change the other one as well. Otherwise, they won't be worth the same. Some people will draw this using a scales analogy. Some of you may have seen old scales before. If the scales is balanced, and I want it to stay balanced, in order to do that, whatever I do over here, I also have to do the same thing here. Otherwise, the scales would topple. Let's look through some more basic examples like this, see if we can get our heads around the idea. So, the next one we're going to look at is this. So in reading this, x has been divided by 3. And when you do that, the answer comes out as 5. So, BIDMAS is the order of the operations were done, and we're going to work backwards and reverse those operations. There's only one operation that's been applied, which is dividing by 3. So I'm going to have to do the inverse or the opposite, which is to multiply by 3. That takes me to x being 15. This side will be clear to you. Remember over here, because we have this divide by 3, which we're trying to reverse or undo, we have to not write it here because it's gone. The multiplying by 3 has cancelled it out. Let's look at 2 more operations and how we would do them. And you might see the reason why I've picked this pair. So what we've done so far is we looked at 2 times x. Then we've looked at x divided by 3. So multiply, divided. Now we're going to look at the pairing of adding and subtracting. So x add 5 equals 8. So the operation we're going to reverse is adding 5. So we're going to take away 5 from this side, which will leave me just with x, and take away 5 from this side, which will leave me with 3. Here we've got x subtract 4 to reverse, so I'm going to add 4. When I add 4 to this side, this term will disappear and I'll just be left with x. So I write my x there. And this side becomes 6. When you have an equation with just one step, it can be quite straightforward to see what the inverse is. Let's look at another couple of slightly harder one-step examples. So, here's one. X cubed equals 8. Now, in order to find x, we need to do the inverse of cubing it, which is the cube root. Now, this means what number do I multiply together 3 times to get 8? So what number, and it must be the same number, do I multiply together 3 times to get 8? You can try some until you find the one that works. So it's 2. Here's another one. The square root of x is 4. So what is the inverse to this operation? Well, the opposite of square rooting is to square something. So we would get x, and we would get 16. In the next video, we'll look at what happens when you have more than one operation.